This video and the next one focus on how to adapt your activity to fit your limits. This video focuses on two topics: adapting individual activities and alternating activity periods with rest. We all have limits for various activities such as housework, shopping, driving, standing up, exercise, time on the computer, and so on. If we go beyond those limits, our symptoms are intensified. A popular way to avoid higher symptoms is to set activity limits, done one activity at a time. Setting limits can mean that you stop doing some things entirely, or that you set a limit and stop before your symptoms intensify. We call the latter stop before you drop. Creating a list of things you no longer want to do gives you permission to take things off your should-do list, eliminating activities without feeling guilt about it. Having a not-to-do list gives you a justification for taking steps to protect your health. This idea is explained in more detail in an autobiographical article on our main website called Making a Not-to-Do List. Our main website is the cfitselfhelp.org, and we have a second site which we did jointly with Dr. Lapp called Treating Chronic Fatigue Syndrome and Fibromyalgia. That's treatcfsfm.org. In order to put limits on individual activities, you can follow a two-step approach. First, determine your limit for each activity by focusing on one activity at a time. I'll call that define limits. Define limits. For example, if you think your limit for housework is 10 minutes, try that much, and then note how you feel at the end of that time and also later, since the effects of activity can be delayed. If you feel okay, you may be able to do more. If you feel worse, try less. Soon you'll get a picture of how much you can do without making your CFS or FM worse. Then second, gradually adjust your activities to fit within the limits you discovered. So I'll put that as adjust. Some people find it helpful to enforce their limits using timers. For example, if their limit for working on the computer is 20 minutes per session, they might set a timer for 17 or 18 minutes, giving themselves a little time to finish up after the alarm sounds. Setting limits can also involve explaining your limits to others. For example, you might tell people at the start of a phone call that you have enough energy to talk for 15 minutes. So let me put timers down there as a way of thinking about using various devices to help you. If you want to follow this approach, you may set limits on many activities, such as how long you stand, how long or how far you drive, how long you spend on the computer or the phone, the time you spend shopping or socializing, how far from home you'll travel, and how long you will spend doing housework. Keep in mind that your limits will likely vary from one activity to another. For example, when I had recovered to about 75% of my pre-CFS activity level overall, my exercise ability was only about 1/3 of what it had been before I became ill. A good starting point for people with moderate to severe CFS or fibro is to set a limit on the number of trips that they make outside the house. The average person in our program rates herself somewhere around 25% of normal. A typical limit for someone at that level is 2 or 3 outings a week. For people who are lower, the limit might be 1 trip a week or less. So let me put down trips. Trips is something to set a limit in, an area to set a limit in. Another popular activity to limit activity limit is to establish a wind-down period at the end of the day, typically an hour or so before bedtime. Thus, if your bedtime is 10:30, your wind-down would start maybe around 9:30. The wind-down may involve turning off the computer and television and might include taking a bath or reading or some other relaxing activity. So let me put that down as wind-down period. A second way to control symptoms is by using short activity periods alternated with rest breaks, and I call that alternating activity and rest. There. 2 short periods of work with a break in between can produce more and leave you feeling less symptomatic than the same amount of time expended in one block. Take a task like chopping vegetables. You might experience no pain if you stop after 10 minutes, but pain that lasts 1 or 2 hours or more if you continue beyond that limit. Another example, a person in our program does 10 minutes of house cleaning, rests for 5 minutes, and then does another 10 minutes of cleaning. This approach is an application of the general idea that pacing means balancing activity and rest. People who alternate periods of activity with rest breaks seem to expand their functional capacity. They accomplish more with less pain and fatigue. It's still possible to accomplish a lot even with very short activity periods. One person in our program who is severely limited because of CFS was asked to translate 2 documents from Chinese to English. Through experimentation, she found that she could work at her computer for only 15 minutes at a time before feeling ill, and she decided to have 4 work periods a day of 15 minutes each, for a total of 1 hour. She completed her translations in 5 months. In a later project, she was able to expand her work periods from 4 to 8 a day. You can apply the principle of alternating activity and rest to exercise. I discovered this myself in the 3rd year I was sick with CFS. During the first 2 years I was ill, I expanded my daily walks very modestly from about 20 minutes a day to 30 minutes. Then I decided to experiment with incorporating rest into my walks, walking for 20 minutes, then sitting for 20 minutes, and then walking some more. By including a long rest in the middle, I was soon walking 40 minutes a day without increasing my symptoms, and over the next 2 years, I gradually returned to taking long hikes of up to 20 miles a day. People with more severe cases of CFS or fibro will probably benefit from a much shorter period of exercise and rest breaks that last 2 or 3 times as long as the exercise times. For example, 2 minutes of exercise followed by a 5-minute rest. So there are 2 ways to pace your activity: by adapting to limits for individual activities and by using short activity periods alternated with rest.